yoga. And so I'm particularly thankful for y'all to be here in this particular class today. So here we are, all doing yoga together via Zoom. Who would have ever thought? All right, so sit up straight and tall. Lift your chest well. Close your eyes and fold your palms together to your heart. Press your thumbs into your sternum, and then lift your sternum up into your thumbs, and you should feel your sternum rise, but also the trapezius muscles release away from your neck. Then push the heel of the hand together from your elbows, press the heels of the hands together, and you should feel your outer shoulder blades come in a little bit. Then move your thumbs up again and let your trapezius release away from the neck. And having made these external postural adjustments, turn your awareness to the breath and use the breath to create a sense of inner spaciousness. So we've created external stira or stability through the postural adjustment. Now let's create a sense of inner ease or spaciousness or sukha with the breath. So as you inhale, make yourself taller from the tailbone through the head. Keep that height, and as you exhale, move the prana or the energy of the breath outward toward your side ribs and armpits. Inhale, make yourself tall. Keep that height. Exhale, make yourself broad. Inhale, extend yourself. Exhale, expand yourself. And I like those words. The Iyengars in that Iyengar yoga, extension generally refers to the vertical axis, and expansion usually refers to the horizontal axis. So we create extension and expansion through the yoga poses. But I also like those words because they have resonance beyond the physical plane. Through yoga, we extend our awareness and expand our consciousness. One of the main mechanisms for doing that is with the breath. So turn your awareness now to the exhalation and follow the exhalation with your mind. Like it's a pathway or a thread that you can follow from the outer world toward that inner world, the inner landscape of you, the domain of yoga. Use your exhalations to take your awareness there. Patanjali tells us that not only watching the exhalation, but we can also watch the pause after the end of the exhalation as a concrete means to overcome the obstacles towards seeing the inner self. So focus on that pause and let the mind take on the qualities of that pause so that the mind becomes more serene, more sattvic, more still. And from that still place within, let's chant 3 Ams together. Follow that sound with your mind. Follow the reverberation of the sound with your mind. And from that space, inhale once more. Keeping your chest well lifted and broad. Bring your chin down to your chest. And your hands down to your thighs with your palms up. And then raise your head and open your eyes. All right, go ahead and stay in Swastikasana. Press the tops of the feet down into the floor and energetically lift the ankles up. You'll feel that lift again coming all the way up into the chest. Stretch your arms out in front of you and interlace your fingers well. And then turn your palms toward me. Extend from the elbows through the wrist bones to get your arms as straight as you can here. Press the feet down and energetically lift the ankles up. Continue that lift up through the side ribs as you raise your arms all the way up above your head. Then push down with the feet and extend up through the wrist bones, and you'll feel that extension coming into the whole body. You'll also feel your abdomen draw in toward the spine. And make yourself even a little bit taller by pushing up a little bit more, but let your trapezius muscles release away from the neck. Notice which finger you've got on top. I've got my left finger on top. And then stretch your arms straight up so they come into Urdhva Hastasana. And keep lifting up with your right arm and put your left arm back behind you. Push down with your left arm and reach up with your right arm. And then bring your hand over to the outside of your left knee. Push down with your feet and energetically lift the ankles up. Extend up from the tailbone all the way up through the head. And then as you exhale, turn and rotate yourself around. With your right hand, push on your left knee, and you'll feel that that brings the rib cage around. If if you have your hands on a blanket, you can hold on to the blanket and pull the blanket toward the wall that you're twisting toward, and that'll bring your back ribs around even more. So as you inhale, press down through the feet and lift up from the tailbone through the head, create that height or that extension. And then as you exhale, push with both hands in opposite directions so you rotate the rib cage around. Inhale, extend up, and then exhale, expand yourself through this process of twisting. One more time, inhale, lift up, and then exhale, turn and rotate by pushing your hands in opposite directions. And then as you come back to the center, you want to make yourself even taller. So push down with both hands as you come all the way back to the center. And stretch your arms out again. Interlace your fingers the opposite way. So I've got my right finger on top now. And extend your palms toward the screen. Let your shoulder bones release away from the ears, but extend from the elbows through the wrist bones. Then connect with the base, press down with your feet and energetically lift the ankles up. Feel that extension coming all the way up through the side ribs, and then reach your hands all the way up above your head. Push down with the feet and lift the ankles up, and again, continue that lift through the side ribs all the way up through the wrist bones. Feel that abdomen drawing in toward the spine to support that extension. Let the trapezius release away, but reach up as much as you can with your wrist bones. Nice Melinda, this really good work with the arms. Then release your hands into Urdhva Hastasana. Stretch up through the ring fingers. Keep reaching up with the right hand and put your left hand down behind you. Press down with your left hand, reach up with your right hand, and then swing your arm around to put it on the outside of the knee. And twist in the opposite direction. So push down with your feet and energetically lift the ankles up. Continue that lift all the way up from the tailbone through the head. And then as you exhale, turn and rotate yourself around. Inhale, lift up, make yourself tall. And then exhale, turn and rotate yourself around. And the rotation really happens the more you use your hands. So it's really, it's not a casual action with the hands. You really push, okay? And you really pull on the blanket in that opposite direction. And the more you use your arms, the more the rib cage is going to come around and you're going to get additional twist. Inhale, lengthen up from the tailbone through the head. And then Getsugi, exhale, turn and rotate yourself around. One more time, inhale, lengthen up. Exhale, turn and rotate yourself around by pushing with your hands in opposite directions. And push down with your both hands as you lift and come all the way back up to the center. And then stretch your legs out into Dandasana, staff pose. Engage your quadriceps well, lift your inner thighs. Join your big toes together and spread through your other toes. And then switch the cross of your legs the opposite way. Turn the soles of the feet up toward the ceiling. And you do that by putting your thumb on the big toe base joint and your fingers underneath your feet, and then turn your feet up. Then you can do even a little bit more by moving your thumb to that space between the big toe base joint and the other base joints and turn. And you come more onto the Virasana part of the foot. Then move your calf flesh out of the way and use your hands and externally rotate the thigh flesh. You should feel that your sitting bones have moved in a bit. I actually now I'm realizing I didn't do that at the very first of class, and it now feels really good. I'm feeling like I'm getting a little extra lift. And stretch your arms out again. Hook one thumb over the other thumb and pull your thumbs against each other to get the elbows straight. Again, let the trapezius release away from the neck as you reach your arms all the way up above your head. Pull your elbows against each other and stretch up through the ring fingers. Make yourself nice and tall. Notice where this hits the shoulder blades a little bit differently, more on the top of the shoulder blades. You should feel lots of extension still coming into the side ribs, and hopefully you'll feel that abdomen draw in toward the spine. Then release your hands down to the left again. Lengthen up from the tailbone through the head, and exhale, turn and rotate yourself around. This time with your hand that's on your leg, go ahead and turn the palm up. And you can still push, but now you're pushing with your hand against your leg rather than gripping. And for me, it gives me a little bit more opening in that top chest. I'm still pulling on the blanket with my hand going in the direction that I'm twisting toward. You're gonna try and get your arms straight. And maybe you can even reach your fingers underneath the thigh a little bit. Yeah, that looks good, everyone. Okay, and Cliff, both of you have really straight arms. That looks great. Lengthen up from the tailbone through the head. Exhale, turn and rotate. One more time, inhale, lengthen up from the tailbone through the head. Exhale, turn and rotate. And push with both hands as you come all the way back to the center. And then switch the cross of your thumbs. Pull your thumbs against each other. There you go. Keep pulling your thumbs against each other as you reach your arms all the way up above your head. See if you can even get your arms back behind your ears. Keep turning the triceps from the outside in. Everyone's arms really like getting pretty straight there. And relax your face. And swing around to the opposite side. And then again, turn that hand palm up. And I'm even trying to reach my fingers underneath the thigh here to get a little bit more extension in that arm. As you inhale, lengthen up from the tailbone through the head. Exhale, turn and rotate yourself around. Inhale, lengthen up. Exhale, turn and rotate. Good, Alexandra, Amelia. Oops, nice twisting. And turn and rotate again. And then push down with both hands as you come all the way back to the center. And stretch your legs all the way out into Dandasana again. Yesterday I was teaching up in Waco, and I've gotten really used to seeing y'all on my new big screen, and there happened to be a bunch of people in class yesterday because the classes at Castle Hill were free, and everyone looked like they were, and I only had my laptop, and everyone just looked like they were like a tiny postage stamp. So I'm really enjoying seeing you in a little bit bigger picture right now. But we did this yesterday. Go ahead and bring your left leg up and put it on your right thigh, like you were going to do a Padmasana, but we're not. We're actually going to do some things to stretch out the toes. I've been taking care of the ridgebacks while Jeff has been in Houston, and so I've been having to walk a lot more, and I've noticed that my feet are just pretty tight from the additional walking. So Vicki, I guess you're going to be able to do this with one foot, right, and not the other foot. Okay. So this is, it's not, this is a funny story. It's quote unquote, this isn't a yoga pose, but it's a way of making your feet more open. And I guess Lori told me this. Oh, and Lori's going to actually do a workshop the same weekend that she normally comes, that third weekend in January, and Jonathan's going to host it, but it's only going to be Saturday afternoon and Sunday afternoon, and we'll have details about that. And she was telling me the story that when Mr. Iyengar came to Ann Arbor in the 70s, that people were doing this foot thing, and he thought it was really strange. And then they were at a potluck or something, and they found him, and he was trying out this foot stretching stuff. Okay, so Mr. Iyengar at least did it, even if he didn't teach it. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is create space between your toes. Okay. So I've got, hold on to your big toe and your second toe and move them apart from each other. And you also pull up a little bit so you stretch the back of the toes. Then move the second toe and the third toe away from each other, and then pull up a little bit so you stretch out the back of the toe. Then do the third toe and the fourth toe, move it apart from each other, and then pull up a little bit so you stretch out the back of the toe. Then the fourth toe and the fifth toe, same thing, pull apart and pull up. So now you've got space between your toes. Now you're going to take your hand and put the finger, the webbing of the fingers between the webbing of the toes. And for me, it works best to start with my middle finger and then do my ring finger, and then put my second finger in, and then put the little finger in, because the little toe is often pretty flexible. And if you can't get your webbing to webbing, that's okay. You just do what you can do. Then shake hands with your foot. You're going to move your feet back and forth. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's it, Melinda. And then you can move up and down with your toes, and you can also make circles with your toes. Whenever I do this, I actually get a release in my sinuses. And I think it's because they're actually little sinus pressure points at the tops of the toes, like if you look at one of those acupuncture maps. All right, then the next thing, take your other hand, and there are bones on the top of your foot, and you can massage between the bones of the foot, and you may feel little places that are particularly tight. Like for me, between the fourth and fifth toe, kind of halfway down my foot, is a place that's particularly tight. And if you look on the acupuncture charts, That actually corresponds up to tightness in the hip. All right, so that's one foot. Yeah. And stretch the foot out and see if you can see a difference between the right, whatever foot you did and the foot that you didn't. And then Vicki, you get to do your other foot again. And then bring the opposite leg up. You can bring it just wherever you want on your thigh. If you can't get it on the top of the thigh, if that hurts your knee, you can also put your foot on the floor. That is a nice also way of getting a little Padmasana in. And so take hold of your big toe and your second toe, and you move them apart from each other, but also pull up. Okay? Because the toes tend to kind of curl back as we age. And so you want to also extend up through the back of the toe. Then do the second and the third toe and extend up. And do the third toe and the fourth toe and extend up. And then do the last toes and pull up. Right, that in and of itself, again, as I'm feeling this drainage in my sinuses. And then take your middle finger and put it between your second and your third toe, and your ring finger in, and then your, what do you call it, index finger and your little finger. This foot is a lot tighter on me, so I have to work a little harder to push the toes down into the foot. And then shake hands with your foot. And then move your feet up and down. And make circles with your feet. Make circles the other way. And then you can massage between the bones of your feet. This does get easier to do if you do it regularly. I go through stages of doing it pretty regularly, and then I forget about it until my feet feel really tight. But all right, so here we go. And join your big toes together and spread your other toes wide apart. Oh, wow, that was really very effective. And now my left toe is spreading even better than my right toes. And by pushing the toes against each other and moving the little toes apart, you should feel that your thighs engaged, the inner thighs lift, and then draw up from the little toe side of the foot into the outer hips. Lengthen up through your side ribs and roll your shoulder bones back. Bring your shoulder blades in, away from the neck, and into the center of the body and up a little bit so you really feel that chest get well lifted and broad. And then put your palms at your sides like you're doing a downward facing dog. Spread your fingers like you're spreading your toes. Press down through the wrist bones and lift up into the armpits. Into a really nice Dandasana. You should feel that same drawing in of the abdomen here as well. All right. So stand up in Tadasana. So Walter was my first teacher, was not an Iyengar yoga teacher. He was an eclectic teacher, but he did have copies of Light on Yoga for sale. And so I got a copy of Light on Yoga pretty early on. And I wouldn't say, I didn't really learn how to use Light on Yoga until I started studying Iyengar yoga. Okay. But, and what we're gonna do today is actually some of the first poses in the book of Light on Yoga. Okay. Join your big toes together and spread your other toes wide apart. And we don't normally do that foot stretching, so see if you can feel the difference in how your feet are actually spreading and touching the floor from having done the toe stretching. And lift your quadriceps up, lift your inner thighs up, move your buttock flesh down and lengthen through the side ribs. Roll your shoulder bones back and bring your shoulder blades in, away from the neck and into the center of the body and up a little bit so your chest gets nice and lifted and broad. And then extend very strongly through your ring fingers. You can spread your palms at first, okay, to get opening in the palms, but then you want to join your fingers and join your thumb with your fingers. Okay? And this is the first pose in the book of Light on Yoga. The fun pose. All right. Then the next pose in the book is Vrikshasana, or tree pose. And it's interesting to think about Vrikshasana in terms of why it's second. Yeah. And what does Vrikshasana force us to do almost immediately? Well, you balance on one leg instead of two. So to me, that notion of balance must be really central to the practice of yoga. Okay, so turn your right leg out, lift your right leg up, and place your heel as high on your thigh as you can. Push your foot and your thigh into each other. And then this is also the first, so balance, okay? But you've also got this bent leg and you've got external rotation. Okay? So that also must be a key component of yoga, and it is. There's tons of external rotation, but the standing leg is still internally rotating. Right, then bring your leg down. Turn your right leg out, left leg out. Lift your leg up and place your heel as high on your thigh as you can. Push your foot and your thigh against each other. Here's the external rotation. So we've got balance, first thing. External rotation, well, second thing. Lengthen up through your side ribs and keep your chest well lifted. All right, then bring your leg down and come back into Tadasana. And see if you just feel, I actually feel a little bit taller for some reason, having done just the Vrikshasana legs when I return to Tadasana. All right, the other component of Vrikshasana, which is very interesting to look at, is with the Urdhva Namaskar-asana. But let's start off in Namaskar-asana. So push your thumbs into your sternum and lift up. Push your heel of your hand against each other to bring the shoulder blades in. Keep your leg action strong. Keep the sides of the torso long. And then reach your arms all the way up above your head. Try to keep your palms together as much as you can. Then push the heel of your hand against each other. And reach up through those fingers, and you should feel opening in the armpits. And then if you were to take a look at the picture in the book being Light in Yoga, his arms are also way, way, way back behind his ears. Yeah. So this is, I would say, the third thing to me that's interesting about Vrikshasana is the requirement of really getting those arms above the head and really getting the armpits open. Right, and then release your arms all the way back down to Tadasana. So we're going to put all three things of those together when we do Vrikshasana. You're going to turn your right leg out, lift the leg up, and place the heel as high on your thigh as you can. So there's balance, there's external rotation, and there's extension through the armpits and reaching the arms all the way above the head and getting the arms as straight as you can. The second pose of the book really has a lot going on. Right, and this is the other interesting thing. If you really reach up and extend up, it actually helps you get even more stable in the balance. And then release your hands down and come back to Tadasana. And then do the same thing on the second side. Turn your left leg out, lift your leg up, and place your heel as high on your thigh as you can. And so balance, external rotation, link through the side ribs, and reach your arms all the way up as much as you can. Feel that abdomen draw in toward the spine as well, and stabilize yourself with that sense of balance. And then release and come down into Tadasana. Where is my Light in Yoga? Anyway, when I started yoga back in the dark ages of 1994, there was not very much yoga around. And in a way it was really good because it forced me to start having a home practice right away because I liked how it made me feel. My mom actually did Bikram yoga, and she gave me a tape of her Bikram yoga teacher, who was a famous Bikram yoga teacher in South Florida where they lived at the time. And so the first home practice I actually had was Bikram yoga. But stretch your arms out. Well, actually, just move your hands at your hips first. So this is the third picture in the book. Okay. I think it's the third one. Yeah. No, he stretches his arms out. But here's the third thing we have to confront. Let's say you have to learn how to bring your legs out wide. Okay. So we started with the legs together. Then we balanced. Now you learn how to bring the legs wide apart. Okay. But spread your toes like we did in Dandasana. Move your buttocks toward your heels. Lift your quadriceps and your inner thighs. Lengthen up through your side ribs and roll your shoulders back. Now stretch your arms out wide as well. Another thing my teacher, Lori, told me, let your trapezius muscles release away from the neck, is that if there's a stage of the pose in Light on Yoga, it's worth practicing on its own as a pose. Okay? So Chaya, move your shoulders away from your ears. Yeah. So this pose in Light on Yoga is just the first stage of Trikonasana. But over time, in the Iyengar Yoga tradition, it got its own name, and it's called Utthita Hasta Padasana, right? Extended hand and foot pose. And then walk your legs back together and come into Tadasana. And see if you can feel the effect of having your legs wide apart when you come back into Tadasana. So you should feel more opening and broadness across the abdominal region. Okay. The other thing I've been thinking about, I kind of taught some of this other couple times this week, but think about what we've done with the arms. Okay? We've extended the arms down in Tadasana. Okay? Then we've got Urdhva Namaste, where we stretch the arms all the way up above the head. And then we stretch the arms out in the horizontal plane. Okay? So extending down, you feel the lift coming into the chest. Extend up for Urdhva Namaste. Feel the abdomen draw in toward the spine and the armpits open. And the third thing we learn to do with the arms is stretch the arms out wide. Extend through your ring fingers, move your shoulder blades in, move your trapezius away from the neck, and then move the shoulder blades in and up and out toward the side part of the collarbones. Okay, so there's a ton going on just in these first opening poses. All right, then let's try the whole Trikonasana. So have your legs out wide, spread your toes, move your buttock flush down, lift your quadriceps and your inner thighs, and stretch your arms out. Now turn your back left toes in a little bit and your front right leg out, and look, oh, here's external rotation again, like tree pose, except we're now doing it with our legs straight. Let your trapezius release away from the neck, press into your back heel and reach out with your arm. And then bring your hand down to your shin. And I'm noticing that my front leg is hyperextending. So I'm going to move my leg back a little bit, other leg back a little bit to give myself a little bit more room. And lengthen through the side ribs. And then turn your head to look up toward the ceiling if it doesn't bother your neck. And press into your back heel and come all the way up. And then turn your feet back to the center. And then turn the other way. Keep spreading your toes. Lift the quadriceps. Same external rotation of the leg as tree pose, except now your leg is straight. Try and level the pelvis. Let your trapezius release and stretch out press into your back heel. Reach out with your fingers, and then bring your hand down to your shin and reach your hand up towards the ceiling. And turn your head to look up at your hands. Good. And then come all the way up. Turn your feet back to the center, and then come back into Tadasana, mountain pose.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
All right. What do I want to say? So I didn't really start studying Iyengar Yoga until 1996, 97. Okay. We're going to do the pose again. Okay. And I had just started teaching yoga at the Waco Family Y, walk your feet out wide. But I wasn't in any way trained to teach yoga. Walter just had more classes than he wanted. And so he asked me if I wanted to teach them. And I said, I don't really feel like I'm ready to teach. And he said, you are, but I didn't feel like I was ready. And then I found Iyengar Yoga. And one of the things that appealed to me about it is how systematic it is. And I felt like once I was learning it, I actually had something to teach, okay? Like a body of knowledge that was organized. Okay? And there are lots of ways that you can think about the organization of Light on Yoga. Okay? But one of them is by looking at the Light on Yoga itself, but there's also this living tradition of how the poses have developed and evolved over time, right? So you can also work with your hands on your hips. Okay? Then turn your back leg in and your front leg out. Okay? Now, it's interesting to think about the external rotation part of the leg, okay? Because it's easier actually to get the external rotation in the tree pose angle than it is often with the leg is straight. Okay? So when I extrapolate from that, there's this how do you say, technique that sometimes people teach in Iyengar yoga, bending the front leg a little bit. And then when you bend the front leg a little bit, see if it actually is easier for you to get a little bit more external rotation of that front leg. Then push down into the ball of the feet and draw up through your inner thighs and your quadricep as you straighten your leg. Level your hips, lengthen up through your side ribs, and then stretch your arms out. Push back down into both heels, reach out, turn your torso toward the screen as you come all the way down into Trikonasana. You can bring your hand on a brick or go down toward the floor. I like to be on my shin these days. All right, then extend from the tailbone through the head. Feel the expansiveness of your arms, the expansiveness of your legs, and then come all the way back up. Turn your feet back to the center. And let's go ahead and come down into Tadasana between sides. Okay. That's another technique. You can keep your legs out wide and do both poses, but sometimes it's nice to come back to Tadasana between sides and just reassess. All right, then second side. Okay, so stretch your legs out wide. Legs out wide is expansion. Move your buttock flesh down, draw your quadriceps up. Oh, we kept our hands on our hips this time. Okay, keep your hands on your hips, lengthen up through the side ribs and roll the shoulders back. And turn your legs. And thinking back about Vrikshasana, bend the knee a little bit so you have more access to that external rotation. And push down into the ball of the foot and lift up through the inner thigh and the quadricep as you straighten the leg. Stretch your arms out, do your shoulder blade actions, press into the heel and reach out with the hand, turn your hand down to your shin and reach up with your opposite arm. Good, these look good, everyone. Nice length in the feet, Alexandra. Nice, Amelia. And then go ahead and come back to the center and then stand in Tadasana.
That back foot always needs to go in a little bit more.
All right, so this is interesting. If you were to just in your mind guess what the next pose of the book is in Lie Down Yoga, you might be surprised. Okay. It is Parivrita Trikonasana, actually, rather than Parsvakonasana. And so that's interesting for me to think about too, because over time, the way the poses have developed and been presented, we learn all of the lateral angle poses first. But actually here we've got Tadasana, Vrikshasana, Trikonasana. So fourth pose in the book, he introduced twisting. Okay? So that also must be a really important component of the practice of yoga overall. Okay, so I'm going to put a brick down behind my right leg. Okay. We're going to do a couple different approaches to Trikonasana. So start with your feet out wide again. Okay. Stretch your arms out. Turn your back toes in a bit more than triangle pose. Okay. More like, let's say, 45 degrees in rather than just a little bit in. And then turn your front leg all the way out. And when you do that, you'll feel your torso start turning already. Keep your back leg straight and keep your arms out. That sometimes helps with twisting. And then swing yourself around and put your hand down on a brick. And you can put your top hand, I like to put my top hand on my hip first and roll that shoulder and chest open. And then it's easier for me to straighten out the arm. And then rotate your ribs around like we did in the seated twisting work in the beginning, and then come all the way back up. So it's interesting, that's a balance pose too, right? It's harder to keep your balance when you're doing Parivrita Trikonasana. So already the balancing work of Vrikshasana is having a connection. All right, so let's do the second side. Turn your back toes in and turn your front leg out. And the twisting starts already. You can keep your arms out wide. I'm actually lined up exactly where my fingers happen to be touching that wall. And so I'm actually pushing with my fingers against the wall. I'm noticing that my back leg is not staying straight, so I want to straighten it more. And then bring your hand down to a brick or the shin or the floor. Place your hand on your hip, lengthen through the side ribs and the tailbone through the head, turn and rotate toward the wall behind you, and then stretch your opposite arm up. And then swing around and come out of the pose That was very energizing. And then come all the way back to Tadasana. So that's the approach in Light and Yoga. Okay. There are other, there are many, many ways to approach all of the poses, but I like to do the Parivrita Trikonasana from Parsvottanasana also. Okay. So, welcome, Kristen. I've got my bricks, and I put them on the front of my mat. And from Tadasana, I'm going to turn my left, you want to bring your right leg forward. Okay. You're going to turn your left toes out a little bit. Okay. And then take a big step forward with your right leg. Straighten your back leg and bring your hips around. Lengthen up from the tailbone through the head. Roll your shoulder bones back and do your shoulder blade actions. There you go. Move your buttocks down and abdomen in, everyone. And then fold forward. Kirsten, you can stay in this first position here, or you can twist a little bit. Okay, so now I've got my hands down on my bricks. Take your shoulder blades in, away from the neck and into the center of the body so your chest stays nice and open. Then bring your left hand over to the brick. Move your right hand onto your hip. Lengthen from the tailbone through the head and turn and rotate. And then reach your arms up. So I find this approach personally helps me really get more rotation in the rib cage. It's also, for some reason, to me, a little bit easier balance-wise, which is probably why I can rotate more. Okay, and then go ahead and come all the way back up. Right, and then we're going to do the second side. Start in Tadasana. Turn your opposite leg out a little bit and take a big step forward with your left leg. Your heels should be lined up with each other. Keep your back leg straight. Bring your hips around close to parallel. Keep your hands on your hips at first. Lengthen through the side ribs and roll your shoulder bones back. Shoulder blades in, away from the neck and into the center of the body and up a little bit so your chest is nice and well lifted. And then go ahead and fold down and come onto your bricks. Lengthen from the tailbone through the head. Place your hand on your outer hip. Move your right hand to the brick. Lengthen from the tailbone through the head and turn and rotate yourself around as much as you can. And then reach your arm all the way up. And you also turn your head to look toward the ceiling. And swing yourself around and come back to the center into Tadasana. So Light and Yoga is not, it has sequency elements to it. But the other thing that was really good about having a home practice early on is I cultivated a kind of self-sufficiency in my own practice. And a lot of times people will ask me, how do you know what to practice at home? Well, there are sequences in the back of the book of Light and Yoga that you can work with. But another thing you can just do is you can open the book, really kind of anywhere within your range, and you can just do poses that are around each other, that they usually have some kind of interesting interrelationship. So you could just do like 5 or 6 poses that are near each other in the book. Do a downward facing dog, headstand, shoulder stand, and then you're done. Yeah. So it's kind of a fun way to think about. It's really an amazing resource. Okay, and then you get to come to class also. That's the nice thing about Zooming. All right, the next pose in Light and Yoga is Parsvottanasana, Utthita Parsvottanasana. So stand with your feet out wide. So we've got the width, okay, so that's really similar to triangle pose. Turn your back toes in and your front right leg all the way out. There's still the same external rotation, but now we're adding the component of bending the front leg, so hopefully it forms a square. Turn your torso toward the screen. Now this stage is not in Light and Yoga, but I like to put my elbow on my knee and push down a little bit. From that outer hip, I extend through the knee, and that also gives me some time to lengthen through the lower side rib and turn my torso toward the screen. Then Put your hand on the floor, use a brick. Make sure you're releasing from the outer hip to the outer knee. There you go. Then reach your arm out and look, this is just like Vrikshasana. Right? Your arm is basically doing the Urdhva Namaskar on top. Sit a little bit lower. Press into your back heel and lengthen through that side rib as much as you can. Extend through the ring fingers. And then come all the way back up. Turn to the center and walk your feet back in.
You did the right.
Don't you feel, I actually feel even more extension through the side rib when I'm in when I'm in Parsvakonasana than I do in Vrikshasana. But the seeds were planted in Vrikshasana for the arm of Parsvakonasana. Okay, so second side. Bring your legs out wide.
You can just
Spread the toes like Dandasana. Lift your quadriceps, move your buttock flesh down and stretch your arms out. Turn your feet. Press into your back heel. Now bend that knee to form a square. Try and stay upright at first. There you go. Extend from your outer hip through your inner knee. Then go ahead and come down onto your elbow. And for me, this is a nice stage because I can sit lower. I can get a little bit more, let's say, length for the lower part of my lower side of my body. And then I can turn that torso toward the screen a little bit more. I remind myself to sit lower and then put your hand on the brick or the floor, turn your torso again, and now add your Utthita Parsvakonasana arm. Press into your back heel and extend all the way through the ribs. Extend through the ring fingers, sit a little bit lower, turn them more, nice sticky. Come all the way up. Turn your feet back to the center. Now walk your feet in. Stand in Tadasana. And observe the effect of your Parsvakonasana on your side ribs. And unfortunately, the pose that's next is Parivrita Parsvakonasana. It comes really early, right? It's now, but seventh pose in. Obviously, Kristen, you're not going to do Parivrita Parsvakonasana, but you could do either Virabhadrasana 1 with your hands on your hips, or you could repeat Parsvakonasana, whichever one you want to do. Let's stand in Tadasana again. All right, we're going to do two different approaches to Parivrita Parsvakonasana. We're going to do the classic version, and then we're going to do the approach that works better for me. Okay. All right, so stand with your feet out wide. Oh, that's the same. Stretch your arms out. Turn your back toes in and your front leg out, and you're going to start that turning. Then you have to bend your front knee. Okay, so you could just stay here, Kristen, and put your hands on your hips. But then you have to reach and get extension like you did in Parsvakonasana and try and get your outer upper arm on the outside of your bent leg. If you can reach your fingers to the floor, do so. Press into your back heel, sit a little bit lower, press your elbow and your knee against each other to turn, then add that same Parsvakonasana arm. So you're getting lots of length in the side ribs.
like this.
And then slide yourself all the way out. Pretty good, everyone. Sit a little bit lower, nice Vicky. And then come all the way back to center into Tadasana.
How is that easy?
That's an intense pose. All right, regroup. One thing you'll notice if you look at this picture in the book is his back heel is on the ground. And yeah, I know. So a lot of times we teach this pose and we'll let people bring their back heel up to get more rotation. But see if when you do the second side, if you can actually pay attention to keeping your back heel on the ground. So keep your back heel on the ground as you bend your front knee. Keep your back heel on the ground and reach your arm up and over, bend a little bit more. See if you can get your outer upper arm on the outside of the knee.
Oh, maybe I'm supposed to do
Turn and rotate, then add your Utthita Parsvakonasana arm. Reach your arm above your head. Sit a little bit lower,
I think it might be this.
and then turn. Nice, Alexandra. These look good, everyone. Sit lower, Chaya. There you go. Good, Vicky. You get exemption, Vicky, from keeping your heel on the ground, obviously. Okay. And then come all the way back up.
I'm not sure.
So yeah, Light on Yoga was published in 1966, which turns out to be the same year I was born. It's also the same year that the first Super Bowl occurred, so important year.
Yeah.
But one of the other things I really like about Light on Yoga, and not Light on Yoga, but Iyengar Yoga, is it really is, I would say, a living tradition. I mean, it's got its books, and so it's a written tradition, but there are people still working and practicing and interpreting it and coming up with different ways and approaches to the pose. And you're part of that lineage. Anyone who's an Iyengar Yoga practitioner is participating in that lineage. And so here's a different approach to how to get into Parivrita Parjvakonasana. Right. So you're going to kneel. And one thing that's great about this approach just from the beginning is your leg is in that 90-degree angle pretty automatically. Right? Kirsten, you could just stay here, okay, and reach your arms above your head, or you can go back to Parjvakonasana. Or you could also be in Upavishtakonasana, Kristen, and just do a little bit of very minimal twisting through your upper back. All right, then take your hand and put it on your pelvic, right hand on the left pelvic bone, and turn and rotate your torso around. Then, and you can use your elbow, but see if you can work your arm a little bit deeper around. We say put the elbow on the outside of the knee, but really, and I can get there, but really and truly, you really want to try and work and get as much of the upper arm around as you can. And you put your hands on your grip, extend through the tailbone, through the head, and turn and rotate yourself around. Then all you have to do is sneak your back leg straight, turn more, and then reach your arm above your head. And then come out of the, nice, Alexandra. I bet you could even get your hand down on the floor. All right, and then release and come out of the pose. All righty, so we've got one more side, right?
It's harder for me to go up on my knee because
I have to do that pose about 10 times in a row in order to get my hand down to it. And I rarely do it 10 times in a row, unless I'm in some workshop where someone's making me do it. But this is, for me, a pretty nice way to access the pose. And you've got the 90-degree angle, lengthen through your side ribs, turn your abdomen, turn your ribs, turn your collarbones, reach your arm up to get that extension in the sides of the ribs, and hook as much of your upper arm on the leg as possible. The other thing you can do is a nice technique is with your left hand, push down on the thigh and see if you can get a little bit more of your post-Thanksgiving abdomen to roll around. And then you can walk a little bit lower. The other thing, particularly if this is hard, don't give up after your first attempt. So can you push down and lift up, push down and lift up, get a little bit lower, then reach your hand down. Another thing I like to do is just hold on to the side of the brick. Now turn and rotate, sneak your back leg straight, sit lower, extend from the tailbone through the head and twist, then add your Parjvakonasana arm. Straighten your back leg, turn and rotate, and come out of the pose. And then stand in Tadasana.
I'm sure I did it right. I think this should be good.
All right. After that comes the Virabhadrasana, but we're just going to stop there. Stand in Tadasana and observe the effect from your first Tadasana,
everything seems
coming back into Tadasana after having done
rubber.
Vrikshasana, Trikonasana, Parivrita Trikonasana, Parjvakonasana, and Parivrita Parjvakonasana. If we were going to go on The next pose in the book is actually the first stage of Virabhadrasana 1, which you bring your arms way, way, way above your head. And you may find that after the Parivricha work, this is significantly easier to do than when we were practicing at the beginning of class after tree pose, or in part of tree pose. So it comes back. And then be in Tadasana. All right, so that's an example. That's not very many poses, right? But I mean, I feel pretty tired and like I got a fair bit of work done. And then the other big component of a home practice or any practice is the inversion time. Okay. So let's do a downward facing dog with the idea of moving toward our inversions. Spread your palms well. And then step back into Adho Mukha Svanasana. Normally we do downward facing dog much earlier in class. We often do it between poses. So you should have a memory of how your downward facing dog generally feels. And then compare, how does your downward facing dog feel now? Doing it quite a bit later in class, after having done those standing poses and the standing twist particularly. Notice also the sides of the armpits are very much like Urdhva Namaskarasana and the Parshvakonasana extension through the side ribs. So things I'm noticing are, I feel a lot of good connection with my hands. I feel a lot of extension through the side ribs. I feel that my thoracic spine is coming in really nicely. And I feel that the weight is pretty, that's Vicky, pretty back in my legs. And I'm seeing that reflected in your poses as well. Okay, straighten your legs, Alexandra, a little bit more. Good. Then walk forward till your feet are right underneath your hips. Place your hands on your pelvic bones. Roll your shoulder bones back. And come all the way up. We're gonna do Prasarita Padottanasana.
I think this year.
Yeah.
All right. Now, this one is interesting to look at in terms of Latin yoga as well. So I'll just give you that for homework. Spread your clothes, lift up through the quadriceps and the inner thighs. It comes after all of the Virabhadrasanas, after Udhita Hasta Padangusthaasanas, and here we are. He starts off with his hands on his hips. And then that brings the shoulder blades in. And then what he actually does, the first stage of the pose is actually back bend. And he's actually back bending pretty much. And feel how that opens the front of the body and also takes the shoulder blades in a little bit more. And keeping your legs strong, keeping the sides of the torso long, fold forward and bring your hands down to the floor underneath your shoulders. Now this is interesting. This is how it's typically taught now, at least to beginners, where you bring your hands down underneath your shoulders. However, that stage is not in Light-on Yoga. He actually goes to the second concave stage first. So that's an example of ways that the pose has kind of been broken down differently. So this stage is nice in a sense because you get lots of length in the side ribs and it's easier on the wrists. But really, if you look at the book, the concave backstage is that his hands are in line with his feet. And that's a lot harder on the back of the wrist. So if you can't quite do that, it's okay. But here's another thing. I mean, this is the first place where you really stretch the wrists in this way. And that is a really important thing to be able to do arm balances at some point. Other thing, and I was looking at this yesterday, he actually shows this stage in 3 different pictures. So if anything that has a picture is worth practicing, something that has 3 pictures surely is worth practicing a lot in and of itself, like it's a pose. And then bend your elbows and bring your head down to the floor. So that's the first stage of Prasarita Padottanasana. If you can't bring your head all the way down to the floor, you just raise the floor up with your brick. You can try standing a little bit wider. First, I need to stay in the concave stage. That's fine. Sugi, that's good leg action. Very good. Now, there are other things, like if you were to look at the book, okay, sometimes the pictures might lead you a little bit astray because his elbows are actually out pretty wide in this stage. And you can try that. You can let him go out wide and see what happens in your shoulders. But over time, it's more taught like your hands are, that your elbows are in Shirshasana too. Other thing to notice as well, when you bring your elbows out wide, see if you can bring your head in a little bit more. It rounds the back a little bit more. Right? And the back is actually very curved in this pose in Light Yoga, in this particular stage. Yeah. But again, over time, it's kind of gotten taught more as almost like a preparation for Shirshasana too, but it's also got this opposite turn of the spine. Okay? Right, then go back to the concave stage with your hands. Okay. So that pose has both the concave action of the back, but also the convex action of the back that we need for poses like Niralamba or Kurmasana. Okay. So it's an action-packed pose. Okay. All right, then walk your hands where they're right underneath your shoulders. Walk your feet in a little bit if you need to, and then come all the way back up and be in Tadasana. All right, so it's time for Shirshasana, or whatever you do when Shirshasana rolls around. Okay. If you aren't a Shirshasana doer, that's totally fine. Okay. You can do headless headstand prep on the floor, where you interlace your fingers, put your forearms down, and push up. Sometimes it's called dolphin pose. Okay. So you can do that. You can also do it with your head on the floor. You could repeat downward facing dog, or you could repeat Prasarada Padottanasana, or you could do Uttanasana with something underneath your head so you get some of that same stimulation of the crown of the head. So pick something that you're going to do. Kristen, if you want to do just like this, you could do Baddha Konasana with your back against the wall, or you could go ahead into Supta Baddha Konasana, whatever feels would be good for you. Okay. All right, you can use the wall if you need to, or you can be in the middle of the room. Remember, it is just fine not to be a headstand doer. This is one of the challenges of teaching via Zoom. That is that the little, I can't like help people up or anything. Some of you, like Gay and Cliff, are fortunate to be practicing yoga together, and so they can help each other. Kathy, this is much more straight up and down than usual, but your leg that's away from the door is turning outward a little bit too much. So turn your thighs in, and yes, much like that. Melinda, the shoulders look good. Lift a little bit more through the inner heels. Way to go, Gay and Cliff. Turn your thighs in, Cliff a little bit more. That looks good, Karen. Sugi, from what yeah, that looks good. Nice shoulder lift. Chaya, that's good. You can actually try walking in with your feet just a little bit. Yes, and then lift your armpits again. Kathy, now your legs are listing to the left. Vicki, that looks right on the money. Amelia, that's really good. Alexandra, pretty good. Just lift your shoulders a little bit more, and your legs are moving a little bit to your right. So move them the other way. Yeah, there you go. And that's it. Good. And then Marsha, that looks good too. Now, Marsha, your legs are actually going back a little bit too far. Not your thighs so much, but your shins are almost like they're doing a bit of a back bend. Okay, Caitlin, Kristen, Lena, and Karen, I can't see you, but I'm sure that you are doing something wonderful and sensible with your Shirshasana time. And it's fine if you don't want to be seen. I don't have a problem with that. I just don't want you to feel that I'm leaving you out. Okay. All right. Okay, that's good. So there's Shirshasana. BKS Iyengar calls this the father of all yoga poses. That looks good, Sugi. You can go ahead and do that if you want. Okay, and then go ahead and we're all going to come down. Okay. So lift your shoulders up, keep your shoulders well lifted on the way down. If you have a little energy and you want to pass through Urdhva Dandasana, go ahead and do so. And then go ahead and come and rest in downward facing child's pose. If you are doing a supine pose, Kristen, you can just go ahead and stay in the supine pose. All right, then go ahead and sit in Virasana. Roll your shoulders back. All right, and then the other big component of the inversions is shoulder stand. All right. So we're going to do Chatush Padasana and Brick Setu Bandha before we do shoulder stand. Those of you who are shoulder stand doers, go ahead and set up your shoulder stand setup now so we can go more quickly from Chatush Padasana to Brick Setu Bandha to legs up to shoulder stand. If you don't do shoulder stand, it's also fine. Okay, there are reasons not to do it. Like your cycle bothers some people's necks. It is called the mother of all poses. So it's a pair really with shoulder stand. But so make your setup. But if you don't do shoulder stand, when we go into shoulder stand, you'll just go into legs up the wall pose. All right. So I'm giving you a little bit of time to make your setup. And then we'll do Chatush Padasana and Brick Setu Bandha, then go into shoulder stand. If you want to do chair or shoulder stand, that's also fine. Okay, Chatush Padasana and Brick Setu Bandha are both preparations for shoulder stand. They have a lot of elements of shoulder stand in them. The first one is more a physical preparation for shoulder stand. The second one is more a mental preparation for shoulder stand. Okay, so lie down on the floor with your knees bent. Have your brick nearby. I like to be angled on my mat. I have this cross mat. And so I'm just picking the one that is to the side so you can hopefully see a little bit better. I like to hold onto the sides of the sticky mat with my hands and tuck the shoulders under from the very beginning. And that makes the chest lift. Then press your feet down onto the floor and lift your buttocks up high. And you keep the height in the buttocks by moving the hamstrings and the buttocks toward each other, and that gives you opening in the front of your body. Then rock to one side or the other, and you should get your shoulder blade touch, shoulders more tucked. Then pull the sticky mat away from your shoulders, and you'll feel that drags the trapezius skin nicely and moves the shoulders more onto the back. Now, thinking about this as a preparation for shoulder stand, keep your chest nice and lifted like this as you lower yourself all the way down. We're gonna do it one more time with a different hand position. So again, tuck the shoulders from the beginning, feel the shoulder blades on the back, press your feet down and lift your buttocks up high. There's another way to use the arms that's more of a preparation for shoulder stand. So you can bend your elbows and push the upper arms down and extend through the ring fingers, and that gives more broadness across the collarbones. Now, pay attention to the back of your shoulder blades and turn your palms to face toward you and push down again, and you'll feel that that brings the upper shoulder blade in more. And this is basically the hand position for shoulder stand. Right? Then lower your buttocks down. Now you take your brick, lift your buttocks up, Chris, and put the brick underneath your sacrum. You can either be horizontal or spine-wise, and then tuck your shoulders underneath you again. Similar shape, but you should feel that there's a different feeling in your brain because of the brick. Now just practice bringing your legs together. It's hard to do for me. And in the full pose, your legs are straight, so you can try wiggling your legs out. You can also try just stretching one leg out at a time and the other leg out at a time. And then just be with your legs together and feel the calmness and the quietude that comes from Brick Setu Bandha. So now we've physically prepared the body with Chatush, mentally prepared the mind. And with those two preparations, go ahead and go either into shoulder stand on your shoulder stand setup, or again, if you're not a shoulder stand practitioner yet, or for some reason, you just go ahead and do legs up the wall pose.
This is how I would do it. Stand up a minute. Or you have to stand up a little.
So shoulder stand, go ahead and go into shoulder stand. You can roll over into plow pose first. There are numerous ways to do shoulder stand. This is another one that has interestingly developed over time. If you were to look at the book, he is not using any blankets underneath his shoulders.
Okay, sit on this first.
But
You're gonna watch me.
he's still got his chest nice and lifted and open, but over time, the Iyengars realized that it was easier on people's necks, and it was easier to get this feeling of being upright in Sarvangasana if you worked with blankets. It's more supportive on the neck. It's easier to stay in the pose for a long time.
So this is just to help you get up really.
Now, a lot of you could work to bring your hands more onto your shoulder blades. And for me, that is easier to do if I come down into plow pose.
Watch
I
me.
can put my feet on a chair in plow pose. And then you can tuck your shoulders underneath you more like we did in Chaturpadasana. And then when you're in plow pose, it's easier to walk your hands more onto your shoulder blades. And then you can come back up. So don't feel like you just have to stay stuck in the pose. It's an ongoing progression. Headstand actually as a pose came very easily to me. I could balance right away. I had to work on lifting my shoulders and I had to work on my leg actions. But shoulder stand, it took me a very, very long time to really make friends with the pose. What worked best for me, well, there are a lot of things that worked, but what worked really well for me was to do it with my feet at the wall and my knees bent. And then I could bend my knees at the wall, I could lift up more, put my hands back on my back and come back up. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty good, Gay. If you can push his, if you can put your knee in his sacrum and kind of push up and in and pull him up at the same time. And if you can get your hands more on his thighs and not on his knees, yeah, like that. Yes, there you go. And then he has to tuck his own shoulders underneath him.
Yeah.
Marsha, that's a really good setup for you. It really gives you lots of nice verticality. Pretty good, Kathy. That's getting better with your hands in your back. So it looks, everyone I can see looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Come up
All
back.
right, good. All right, it's almost time to end. So go ahead and come into Halasana. That's a long hold, Suki, and handstand. Good job.
You put your feet over your head.
And if your legs up the wall pose, go ahead and push out of legs up the wall pose and then come into Shavasana.
Go right back.
Good.
Shavasana is the last pose in the book.
You have to do it a few more times.
Take whatever support you need.
For your favorite pose.
Tuck your shoulders underneath you.
Lay down straight and go to sleep.
Shavasana actually comes after a lot of really intense, kind of crazy back bends. And then you just end in Shavasana.
Shoulders on this or just your head?
Just your head.
Go ahead and put your game, Cliff. Go ahead and mute yourself since we're in Shavasana. The instructions for Shavasana are really pretty interesting. One thing it says is you're supposed to stay in this pose for 15 to 20 minutes. And then the last instruction he gives is he says, one is apt to fall asleep in the beginning. Gradually, when the nerves become passive, one feels completely relaxed and refreshed. In good relaxation, one feels energy flow from the back of the head toward the heels and not the other way around. One also feels as if the body is elongated. So a lot of times I'll tell you, particularly in pranayama classes, I'll say tuck the shoulders underneath you, move the skin of your back body toward your feet. So if anywhere in your back body you feel stuck on your sticky mat, or that there isn't a full movement of the flow of energy away from the neck, you should make those adjustments. And then when he talks about the effects of the pose, he actually refers to several or two particular books. One, the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, and then one that's called Viranda Samahiti. But the Hatha Yoga Pradipika describes Shavasana in this way. You lie on one's back on the ground, and then it says this removes the fatigue caused by the other asanas and induces calmness of mind. The other book says that this posture destroys fatigue and quiets the agitation of the mind. I love that phrase. And then he ends with his own words saying, well, he quotes again the Hatha Yoga Pradipika and says, when prana and manas, the mind, have been absorbed, an undefinable joy ensues. Then he talks in his own words. To tame prana depends upon the nerves. Steady, smooth, fine, and deep breathing without any jerky movements of the body soothes the nerves and calms the mind. And this is the last sentence about Shavasana. The stresses of modern civilization are a strain on the nerves, for which Shavasana is the best antidote. He was talking about the stresses of modern civilization in 1966. But Mr. Iyengar also lived through a global pandemic, the Spanish flu, which he actually got, but obviously did not die from. But Shavasana soothes the nerves and reduces the agitation of the mind. An undefinable joy ensues. It is the best antidote for the stresses of modern civilization. Take a couple deeper breaths. Place your hands on your rib cage. Bend your knees. Roll over to your side. And use your hands to push yourself back up. Sit up straight and tall. Lift your chest well. Close your eyes and fold your palms together at your heart. Observe the effect that your practice has on you. Observe it on every layer of your being, from the physical to the most deeply spiritual. In gratitude to the benefit you receive from your practice of yoga, in gratitude to the people who have the opportunity to learn and study and practice yoga with, and in gratitude to the lineage of Hatha Yoga itself, as practiced by BKS Iyengar, reaching back to the sages of India, and down through a line of teachers and students to you, here on the mat, in Austin, Texas, Paris, France, or wherever you happen to be in the world through the miracle of Zoom. Namaste. Happy Saturday, everyone.